everybody. So there's this game I've been into recently, and I wanted to make a smaller video about it before I start tackling my larger and more serious video projects. That game being Psychopomp Gold, which I picked up after seeing some screenshots of it and thinking it'd be something I'd enjoy. And I did enjoy it a lot for its visuals and style, which isn't really surprising, but within this game there is a lot that I find interesting and worth talking about in something like this. I'm gonna structure this in chronological order of everything I did on my first playthrough, and mention thoughts and tidbits as I go. Then after talking about the regular main ending, I'll go back and touch on extra hidden stuff I find worth mentioning. I don't want this to be taken as a definitive or comprehensive look at the entire game and like all of its lore and stuff. This is mostly about just what I personally find interesting in the game and things that have stuck out to me, and I highly doubt the meaning I've derived from it is a shared sentiment across the whole player base of the game. If I don't mention something, I likely just didn't find it or didn't have much to say about it. So yeah, let's just jump in. Pussy first, dicks out, you know what I'm saying? In Psychopomp, you play as this girl named Venus who believes that everybody's keeping secrets from her, so to remedy this she crafts this helmet she calls the Psychopomp, whose intended purpose was to allow her to read people's minds, but instead of doing that it opens her eyes to an entirely new world that nobody else has seen, hidden under public government buildings. And the goal of the game is to explore this new underground world and maybe do some chores for your few critters while you're down there. It opens with a small quick tutorial area meant to lay out the basics of moving and interacting with the world, and it's where Psychopomp's simultaneously really unintuitive and intuitive control scheme comes to light. This game, given it's a dungeon crawler survival horror game based on old PlayStation games, doesn't really allow for the most free movement. It uses first-person 4-directional tank controls a la Dissolution. Guy who's only played Dissolution playing another dungeon crawler. The control of this game only really serves to make it a lot more stressful, especially whenever enemy you're fighting does more than walk in a straight line, which isn't a lot of them. It's similar to Silent Hill, where it feels like the biggest enemy half the time is your own character, making each encounter where you mix up which button is turn and which one is strafe, or you turn the wrong direction while backing up, that much more panic-inducing. This usually doesn't happen often, but if I ever did misinput something while trying to kill a monster, even if I was not even close to dying at all, it still really got me panicking trying to reorient myself while only really being able to see what's directly in front of me, oftentimes in very dimly lit areas too. The combat is something people dislike about this game, and I see why, but I think the fact that you practically autopilot every fight makes it so the moments you do have to lock the hell in because you hit the wrong key very memorable. And it's such a small part of the game it barely really matters for me. Now in Psychopomp, you're not just going to be moving around, you gotta soak in your environment too. And you do so with the 5 icons at the bottom of your HUD that, when selected, will toggle between different ways of interacting with something. The eye makes Venus describe what it is, the touch makes her pick it up or describe how it feels, the chat bubble makes it say something to you, you never respond back, the hammer makes you attack it, and the paper icon brings up your inventory. Text boxes will never go on for more than a single box, so it feels really snappy switching between modes and gathering info on whatever is in front of you. I honestly really like it, and weirdly enough this system makes the world of Psychopomp feel even more interactive, and I guess makes each decision feel more intentional. Each character has so many little tidbits and info, and you can just stand there and observe every aspect of them quickly and easily, listening to Venus's unique way of describing her surroundings and getting an idea of how wacky and crazy the world is. But the holy grail of Psychopomp UI is the inventory. Clicking the little paper icon will have your inventory menu slide up, and to use a particular item, you just need to drag it on whatever you want to use it on. And I swear, this shit makes me so giddy. I love this way of making it feel like you're actually using something, bringing up keys to their keyholes or dragging syringes to your little character icon to heal. It feels so snappy and natural and makes the world feel that little touch more interactive and like you're actually doing something through its menus. Not to mention just how naturally you catch on to it. Like, it didn't tell me that to heal I needed to drag it over to my icon, that just made sense, it's intuitive. I wish there were more instances of being able to do this. Hell, just make it so to pick something up you drag the touch icon to it. I don't even care anymore. I get so giddy every time I see a locked door and I get to do the thing where I drag the key onto it. It just gets me going crazy, like I don't care. Not to mention how cool the HUD itself is visually, the mechanical look and feel with the sounds of gears clicking and spinning whenever you open up the inventory, and the way you can see each part of it churning and moving around as you explore. Like, it feels so alive. This doohickey HUD is truly wonderful. I love pushing buttons and dragging things across the screen. And Psychopomp is one of my favorite button pushing and thing dragging games, so... The whole aesthetic of the HUD is just so cool to me, and also by extension the sort of aesthetic of the whole game. It goes for a late 90s, early 2000s pre-rendered PlayStation or PC game look, It looks like the kind of thing that only exists in one language and has a picture in its game files from the Vietnam War of someone covered in napalm. Lots of buzzwords in those sentences. I specifically really love the swirling, hypnotic skyboxes that accompany each level and the compressed, gritty look each of the textures have. In terms of games that are influenced by visuals brought about by technical limitations, this and Pseudo-Regalia are my favorite examples. To bring up the HUD again, because my fat ass can't stop talking about it, it has this sort of pre-rendered piece of shit vibe to it. Same thing for the actual cutscenes in the game, and every texture is just the perfect amount of crusty to make drool spill out of my gullet every time I look at them. Yet it takes that sort of aesthetic and really creates a vibe that's solely unique to it. It's like, I guess, a word to describe it would be it's a modernization of these old styles. Like, the textures have that similar look and feel as PSX textures, but are just a bit more detailed, and the models have this kind of chunkiness to them, but I wouldn't consider them low poly. Not to say that this game doesn't have a lot of sauce in its own unique ways too. The art style used for character portraits has this scratchy line work that captures Venus's personality really well, and I love how crazy all her expressions are, especially when she's low on health. There's also this little aesthetic running theme in all of the game that's this combination of what's organic and what's inanimate. This mixture of industrial machinery with what's grotesquely fleshy, and the idea that every inanimate object is somehow alive and breathing. Fake walls you can discern from real ones because they ooze blood and give whenever you hit them, and the hard structure level focuses on this in-universe culture practiced by the people living there, based around how each building is living and requires nourishment to grow as tall as they are. It's a unique choice that adds both to the, I guess, surrealism of the game as well as the overall message and symbolism, which I will talk about later. The soundtrack too, while not being personally a super favorite for me, works really nicely as background noise to aid in the game's atmosphere. I really love the more trip-hoppy moments on here, like Moment of Silence and the ending theme, which is maybe my favorite song in the whole game. I love the occasional use of more industrial drums, making it sound like the backbone of each song is a little machine that keeps pounding away at whatever repetitive job it was manufactured to do, and further pushing the whole mechanical aesthetics of the game. It also leans into more tribal directions when it comes to percussion, and it's a very neat way to take it. Tribal drum patterns have this unique hypnotic quality to them, and it works really well for a game like this. Like, this game's vibe is just really neat to me and well put together, and just hits the nail on the head while still being very unique in its own ways, and I really like it. And the whole nasty piece of shit PSX vibe is nailed so well, honestly. It makes me just want to put the game in low-res 4x3 for an even nastier look. So let me just do that. Let me pause the game. We're going to settings real quick. Let's do that. Let me do that. 1 second. This is one of the most peculiar gripes I've ever had with a game. Not only is there no pause menu, but there's not a settings menu either. Not even on the home screen. I've never really seen a game with this before. I don't know why the ability to make my game look shittier wasn't prioritized. The fuck is the point anymore? But seriously though, pause menu and settings would definitely be nice for a game like this, and I assume not too impossible to implement, but again, what do I know? I just think some graphic settings and a few accessibility options would really benefit it. I'm not too knowledgeable on accessibility settings, but maybe ways to take off the dithering filter or to desaturate the game a bit could make it a bit easier to play for someone with more sensitive eyes, as well as ways to turn head bobbing off, and the third person mode that you unlock only after beating the game might help with motion sickness. Maybe a point and click mode that adds screen fading between each movement and works similarly to teleporting in VR. I don't fucking know. Some moments of this game do get to me a little bit, and I think the camera movements and walking are mainly what caused it for me. This would probably be a bit hard to add, and it's pretty out there, but I'm throwing ideas, whatever. Again, I'm not too sure, so add on to what I'm saying if you're more in the know-how on what makes things inaccessible and how to go about, remedying those issues. Anyways, after that tutorial area, you're given the option of 3 different levels to go to, the first one being the sewage treatment, which is a strong contender for my favorite pre-symbols level in the game. I love how mystical and enchanted everything looks with these medieval castle-esque stones lining the wall, the comparatively very bright soundtrack, and this green hue encompassing everything, making it feel all magical. It's the only level to go for this goofy fantasy theming, and it really stands out for that. It's probably the most vibrant area in the game too in terms of color, and the only one that isn't primarily red. It's very green and is the most natural looking level with lots of plant life and moss in an outside area, which I really like. It's super cozy, and the little church and lonely thread out here add this kind of quaint calmness to it compared to the very whimsical and goofy tone of the rest of the level. Acts has almost this reprieve, I guess, somewhere you can just chill. Inhabiting these catacombs are these little organ plants with cutesy anime stylized masks on. They don't really fit in with anything else in the game, and it's very silly. All these guys are connected to this huge heart-looking guy, which they call the Queen, sucking nutrients out of her, and your job is to kill her because it's not up to par anymore and needs a replacement. That's another thing. You usually have some kind of task in each level that you learn about through talking with NPCs in the area. It's usually pretty easy to pick up on what to do, and in every case it involves killing something. Some instances much more brutal than others. Also inhabiting the level are Thraits, and I really love these guys. They kind of feel like, I guess, the straight men of the game, for lack of a better term. They're simply just creatures trying to survive in the world and care for each of their fellow Thraits. Nothing crazy, just simply creatures in a world trying their best. And they have a genuine sense of community between them, unlike the plant guys and also a majority of other NPCs in the game who are just complete dickheads. I also really love their designs. They're not like gross or abstract like most other species in the game are. They feel really grounded, I guess. It's hard to describe for me, but I like them a lot. They're raw, I guess, and I like their big crazy eyes. One lore room you can find mentions the Thraits as beings that came after the first extinction of humans, and it describes them as meaningless waste that the world is better without. But going off the interactions in this level and throughout the whole game, they kind of just feel like the most down-to-earth species here and the ones who are struggling the most out of anyone. So either the narrator in the museum is just continuing the trend of every Psychopomp character being a complete dickhead to everyone they meet, or Thraits were just a part of a less fortunate and more marginalized group during the time they were alive within the Psychopomp world. I only found out about this just now, but there's a transient location that's called the Thrait Village, which is a sanctuary for Thraits that they were forced into by humans. So I guess that's a May Bunny theory win, I don't know. I kinda wish I'd found more of these locations on my first playthrough though. A few of them have some of the more interesting visuals to them. There's also a few interesting things to note, like the way humans are depicted, which I think is very well recontextualized at the end of the game. The next level is the factory, which unsurprisingly is the one that leans hardest into the fucked up, gross industrial vibe. Tons of doohickeys, contraptions, cogs, grates, and spinny thingies. The whole area feels so bleak and empty. It's the only area in the game with no skybox either. You're only met with the unending void if you ever look off to the side. Is the rest of the factory simply not visible from here, or is it just in the middle of nowhere? Many such conundrums in the world of Psychopomp. I really love this one area past the huge dick crushers that is a very good example of the mechanical and organic thing I talked about earlier, with these blood vessels hanging from the ceiling and teeth and gums protruding from the walls. The rest of the level is so dull and desolate, so this comes kinda out of nowhere, and I want more of it honestly. This shit fucks. The goal of this level is to kill the head of production, who begs you to crush his skull with giant pistons and kill him immediately upon entering the level. White people don't even ask how your day was anymore, they just beg you to kill them. All the workers are very against this guy's suicidal ideation, but you don't need to tell them their plan. They're none the wiser. They're also evil, and it's best to kill all of them. Speaking of killing things, something neat related to that is that using your hammer on any NPC will kill them instantly, and you're never really punished for it, and the game never acknowledges it. So it kind of became this thing I subconsciously did to random NPCs for no reason, and it stopped even registering after I'd done it enough times. Except there's a single instance of the game actually doing something about it, and it's if you ever attack one of the Thraits. I was just replaying the first level, and I went to talk with one of them, and without thinking, I pulled my hammer out of my ass and hit it. And instead of instantly giving, she actually started attacking me back, which was like the biggest snap to reality in any game ever. I saw this and it made me think like, what the hell am I even doing, bro? Felt like I was playing a creepypasta game or something, and honestly freaked me out. After the factory is the hospital level, which definitely shines most conceptually. The concept being that underneath the hospital are these catacombs where these nurses are nurturing flesh homunculi of famous ancient figures, Plato's Cleopatra and Alexander the Great. Each room is filled with monitors and speakers displaying and blasting whatever they love most, but it's all like kind of peculiar things. Like Alexander listens to the sound of warfare, and Platos just has children laughing and playing constantly lodged in its ears because he's a fucking weirdo. You aren't given any guidance from NPCs who are just so enthusiastic about their homunculi, so naturally you just unplug all their life support and kill every nurse. Conceptually and aesthetically, I do like this level. It has a bunch of gunk and flesh monsters around that are neat, and I really like this view of the moon off this balcony. But I'd be lying if I said exploring this area wasn't mildly headache-inducing. Lots of the level is just walking through corridors, and with the very repetitive dull texturing, it has made me a bit yucky feeling before. After that, you're taken over to Hard Structure, the city level of the game. And I really love this one. Everything about it ticks all my little Psychopomp boxes, and I love it. The giant moth-like bugs resting on the sides of buildings are genuinely gorgeous looking to me, and it hits down that sort of weird nightmare feeling super well that not any other level has really gotten purely on a visual level like this. Who the hell does this guy think he is? The walls don't really have a fleshy looking texture to them. Instead, they're more like pulsating organs, and the way they each look like they're melting or secreting goo makes for such a yucky and uncomfortable, but also really cool atmosphere that I love. It's like you're traveling through an actual like organ system, especially in the more enclosed areas. It's really freaky and neat. It's a similar feeling to the flesh corridors of the hospital in Silent Hill 3, which is maybe the highest praise I can give anything ever because I fucking love Silent Hill 3's visuals. The organicness of the buildings plays into the level's concept and lore. That I think is my favorite instance of Psychopomp's occasional catacomb world building. The little hard structure people here were given their own unique culture, centered around spending their whole lives nurturing these buildings that they won't even see fully grow in their lifetime, and will have to pass down those responsibilities to their descendants. You can learn all about how like the buildings function, like how graffiti is recontextualized as outlets for buildings to communicate, and each one is connected to this big root thing that makes producing more of them possible. It's really neat and plays perfectly into the already established aesthetics and themes of the game. I love that Psychopomp included stuff like this. It made such a huge big freaky world, and I get to learn about all the customs and lifestyles of the big freaky people in it. Despite being generally one of the less upsetting levels from a conceptual standpoint, it still has this weird ominous aura to it, with maybe the most drony background track in the game by far. I said it before, but this is the level that probably leans the most into surreal and gross aesthetics to make for a really nightmarish level. Not like in the scary sense, but more in like the nasty and completely powerless sense. These moths are like huge as freak and will apparently set back building development by an incredible amount. And like, yeah, you can kill them, but walking around, it's hard to not just feel completely helpless. It's kind of hard to describe, but this whole scenario feels the most like something I would actually dream about. The towering huge moths just make me feel so small, which is probably one of the biggest ways of scaring you that nightmares often go for, at least in mine. Saying this like nightmares like have conscious, intentional, artistic decisions or whatever, but like they kind of do though, no? They have like a point of view, purpose, plot, and I mean they were crafted by like a human brain. So like, are dreams art? Like, do we all subconsciously create art? Does this represent the innate creativity that lies within every human? I don't know, many such conundrums in the world of Psychopomp. The next level is Instructions, which ditches the streak of levels with spookier tones and returns back to its sewage treatment roots, taking on a much more lighthearted and silly theme. It goes for this giant science center look with little arrows pointing you towards points of interest like a little tourist attraction, big signs and model dioramas of DNA and planets, and the little instructional guide on how strands of DNA are formed that you need to check in order to progress, unless you've already taken like high school biology and you know that shit. It's honestly an adorable little level, and really pretty on top of that too. Getting a good vantage point and just looking down at everything, there's so much for my little eyes to look at. Sewage treatment was very stylistically distinct compared to the other levels, which makes it stand out a lot in comparison to the rest of the game. But Instructions still has that Psychopomp grotesque dullness with how muted the colors are. Yet it still feels very alive thanks to the really small details that go a long way, like the bright LED signs or swirling blue rings around the big DNA strands. I also like the extra visual flair this level adds in the UI department. The little fish hook with a sticky note attached that hangs from the top of the screen after you analyze the big evil critter's DNA is so cute, and the DNA sequence injector panel is so cool looking with its like tentacle-esque wires and pre-rendered piece of shit look. Anyways, you beat this level the same way you've beaten every other one, by killing some big evil thing. This time it's an icky virus guy that you need to make a strand of DNA to inject into him that isn't too friendly with his insides. So yeah, Instructions is a really neat level and I really like the concept to it, and the song is really goofy and fun and I like it. The final level of Psychopomp is called Symbols. Stylistically speaking, it's probably the most abstract level in the game, which I guess is fitting given its name. In every other level, it's pretty clear where it's supposed to be taking place, but in Symbols, it's not really anything totally recognizable. Some parts look like coliseums, others look like museums, others don't even really resemble anything. These design choices do play into the themes of the level though, and I'll get into that in a second. It's also probably the only level you will realistically ever die on, specifically because of the swinging axis part. So the main goal of this level is to find the 4 paragons, the paragon of flesh, people, symbols, and concepts. You'll need to kill each one to absorb their knowledge, officially making this game go 6 for 6 with killing shit to progress. This area is where the symbols-ism and meaning of Psychopomp becomes clearest to me, and I think the events of this recontextualize basically the entire game up until this point. Psychopomp and Venus's whole arc throughout the game, to me, represents the process of learning self-understanding through art. The paragons give her understanding of the people around her that influence her feelings or inspire her, the flesh that makes up her as a person, the concepts that provide groundwork for art, and the way those concepts are later expressed in that art as symbols. I see Venus's journey through these catacombs as a way for her to find out her own way of expressing herself. She starts to understand what resonates with her and how things that are more abstract are how she personally feels seen. One area in Symbols that I really like is the art gallery, full of violent and gross sculptures and paintings that don't seem to depict anything recognizable aside from the little torso. The symbol person near the bottom implies that these represent the worst parts of Venus, and I like to think that this room and Symbols as a whole is kind of what manifested because Venus entered the catacombs. Venus saw the strange world around her and seeds planted in her head. It was kind of a form of inspiration for her, you know. And the Paragons kind of appeared here as a way to get Venus to make more sense of everything, kinda, I guess. All these sculptures seem to point towards Venus having body dysmorphia or violent tendencies, two things I think are generally hinted at slightly throughout the game. And it's like, hell yeah, you go girl, make all your event art. The Symbols guy at the top says something that I think is very important regarding the entire story. He says, "We are formed of art, and art is formed of us."
That's pretty deep, bro.
The way the area resembles a museum somewhat also plays into the theme, I think, of this just being a mishmash of art and ideas poured out of Venus's head. This whole theme doesn't just apply to emotional expression either, I don't think. Simply just ways to create what you think portrays how you are as a person. Venus seems like a pretty spunky individual, and given the opening having her in this formal business attire, maybe she unfortunately lives a boring cubicle chud life. So seeing all these wacky critters in strange worlds seems like a way to kind of open her eyes and show her the joy of making weird shit that feels like it came from her heart, and that's kind of sweet. After Symbols, Venus is taken to the Mariana Trench, the murkiest, most sunken part of the catacombs, before reaching the very center of Earth. And with the embryo she's collected, she creates life, a little fetus baby that's formed in her hands. Something to symbolize Venus's newfound desire for creation, and as a way to show the rebirth of herself, with a new understanding of flesh and people and symbols and concepts. Then she grows dragonfly wings and flies away. All this came from a device meant to let her read people's minds because she thought everyone was keeping secrets from her, but even if it doesn't seem much like it, I think it served its purpose. Thematically, of course. Venus I take as someone who was struggling to understand herself and the world around her, where it seemed like everyone just had everything figured out and like all that knowledge was kept from her. Instead of getting there by reading people's minds though, she did so by taking a little tour through her own and found out, I guess, her purpose. A way to feel like she's actually herself. This can also be taken in ways that don't pertain to artists either, like if you want to go the everyday Joe Schmo direction for Venus's character, because everyday people are able to see themselves in like weirder shit and not take it as inspiration, but more as comfort and a way to feel seen. This plays well into another big theme of the game in my eyes, how meaning can be found in anything, no matter how repulsive or abstract or visually challenging or terrible it may be, and sometimes things like that are really the only way to get those feelings out. And that's not really something to be ashamed of at all. That's why I think emphasis is put on the sentience of every inanimate object and what that kind of symbolizes in the game. I like to think this game challenges these notions of challenging or upsetting art that are like this isn't still deeply rooted in human experience and bonds. Like how lots of people like to glorify the disturbing nature of shit instead of realizing the deep-seated humanity within almost all like fucked up art. Not that there's anything wrong in not finding deeper meaning in this kind of stuff, but there's definitely, in my opinion, less obnoxious ways to go about expressing that. This video by Mara about Shoujo Tsubaki is an extremely enlightening watch and argues that something like this fucked up, grotesque OVA with no hope, where everything horrible that can happen to the main character happens, and isn't afraid to cover extremely touchy subjects so unabashedly, isn't automatically bad because of its themes, and isn't a statement on the moral character of the artist and people who've derived meaning from it. And it really educated me on something that I previously only saw as just a gross OVA that wasn't that interesting or meaningful, and it's given me a lot to think about. Obviously, Psychopomp isn't nearly as upsetting as Shoujo Tsubaki, like not even close, but I feel like I come back to this video whenever I think of how I've interpreted Psychopomp's message. Sometimes shit just needs to get out in more abstract and sometimes very upsetting ways, but that doesn't take away anything from the humanity found within that expression, because sentience in life exists in everything, even the inanimate walls around you. Symbols does signify the end of Venus's story, but there's still more in the game to explore that I've entirely neglected to mention, and a little teaser, I think, following the character Mercury, which I'll talk about now, because I feel like it. After seeing the credits roll, if you go back into your save, there will be a new level accessible called Exit. This is less a traditional Psychopomp level, and more something you could consider setup for a sequel to the game, which I'm honestly too far gone to discern if this is a bit made by the devs. Like, it's most likely not, but like for some reason I don't even fully believe it. I don't know, I have no idea. Visually it looks really cool, and unlike anything that's seen in Psychopomp, it's neatsies. It's just the more industrialness for, I guess, a more earthy look. I'd assume because it actually takes place on Earth and not in the public government building depths. The music here is also maybe my favorite song in the game. It reminds me of Night in the Woods a lot, specifically in the nasty guitar tones. You're also given a new HUD. I can't exactly tell what it's supposed to be, but I think it's pretty.
I'm so fucking tired of these damn bugs. Every which way I go, it's...
The main hidden alternate ending or route of the game is accessed by finding each emerald key hidden throughout each of the 6 levels in the game, with each one allowing you to delve further into the area simply just called home. This place is real freaky. It feels the most Yume Nikki inspired with the abstract critters that writhe around. Also, the little sprite of Venus is really cute, I like it. Once you've reached the very end of home and walk through the final door, you're taken into a new area that genuinely floored me when I first saw it. The entire game has been so gritty and nasty, and you're finally treated to something so natural and lush. The colors here are gorgeous too. I love how objects get more blue as they get farther away. You know, it's like the B3313 fog shit I frothed at the mouth over. It looks so magical. The backing track too is this really beautiful new age ambient piece that gives the whole area such a soothing and meditative aura. It makes me think of Enmesh and Telepath's collab album Path to Lost Eden, which you should go listen to, it's very peaceful. Walking up to the shrine, you see 2 figures, the bright one being Venus and the dark one Mercury. And if you interact with them, it shows you a small exchange between the 2 of them when they first met. I assume this was taken from when they were both little, just judging by the way they talk to each other and the figures you interact with to start this exchange. It's sweet and pretty silly, and shows that Venus and Mercury were good friends at some point. I also think this small interaction helps with the theme of self-understanding and reconnecting with yourself, given little Venus talks about loving hammers and dragonflies, and Venus gets to hit shit with hammers and sprout dragonfly wings. Something I assume she did not get to do outside of the catacombs, and I guess acts as a way to connect with her younger and probably more freely creative self. Okay, a lot of what I'm saying is slightly based on assumptions in the main character. Like, my interpretation is just slightly riding on the fact that she's wearing formal attire and smoking a cigarette for one shot in the opening cutscene, but like, it's gotta be relevant somehow, right? Anyways, lots of stuff involving who Mercury is and a lot of unanswered questions I personally have. I won't speak on much, and we'll wait until the second game comes out and maybe, I guess, make an update on this if I care enough to. I do think that the second game will follow a decently similar story of a character getting involved in some crazy shit that ultimately leads to them finding their purpose or figuring out some internal problem they have. I hate doing this because it makes me sound like a fucking nerd, but Psychopomp is some Greek mythology thing that guides spirits to the afterlife. And I don't think Psychopomp led Venus to her death, but it definitely was a guide for her and showed her where she belongs, similarly to how in Greek mythology it would guide spirits to where they were meant to go. Maybe Mercury's Psychopomp is the little critters he rounds up in the desert before going off on his journey, or it's whatever incident caused them to all band together in the first place. There are also a few what the game calls locations that are much smaller and more contained tidbits of lore that go a lot more into the world building of the game from the ones I went to. Throughout a few of them, there's this little plot through line of the queen going missing, and right before reaching the Earth Center, you reach the queen's throne with some skin shedding stuff behind due to the queen's metamorphosis that took place. And they look kind of like dragonfly sheddings to me, which sort of implies the Queen and Venus are connected, given the whole rebirth symbolism behind dragonflies, and Venus growing dragonfly wings at the end. Then again though, I kind of have no idea what animal this is supposed to be, so like, grains of salt, I guess. What I'm thinking is, the Queen went through metamorphosis that turned her into Venus, and that took her out of the catacomb Psychopomp world, and that made everything think she'd gone missing, and Psychopomp needed to bring her back to where she really belonged as the Queen of the catacombs. Coinciding with the guide interpretation of what the Psychopomp even is? Maybe. Given what I've said, I mean, it makes sense for this to at least be close to the lore, but also I don't even know if my interpretation is completely in line with what was intended, so we might just be on completely different wavelengths here. I mentioned earlier that I thought the catacombs, or at the very least symbols, was manifested by Venus herself, because of this connection to the Dragonfly Queen, and one random phone call that mentions bugs and how they create worlds, which also gives more context to the way humans are depicted as meaningless mush that just speak in singular words or phrases instead of fully formed thoughts, given these are kind of reflections of Venus's thoughts. It's just that the catacombs most likely were made when she was the Dragonfly Queen, and then she metamorphized. This is the lore theory crafting here. I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but... So that's all of Psychopomp Gold, a game I went into expecting just a neat atmospheric experience that turned into something I very regularly thought about long after I finished it, and found a lot of meaning that I think is very applicable for me. Not to get too romanticizing, but I hold my aesthetic inspirations very near to my heart. I like mixed media, I like cheesy internet horror, I like shitty looking 2000s games, I like overly colorful stuff, I like layering blend modes and making color mush, I like stuff that looks like shit, I like really quiet stuff, I like scene and Y2K, all those little buzzwords and styles that feel like outlets for me, like parts of me, not even just in my own art. Shit like Tomorrow's My Birthday or Pseudo Regalia have become so ingrained into my head and feel almost like an extension of myself despite me not even having made them. Even the small silly things are like this for me, even the plain and boring walls around me have blood in them. As sad as this might sound, I feel like if I wasn't an artist, I genuinely would be almost purposeless as a person. I feel like it's what I was kind of born to do or something, and if I'm not creating, then I'm just like wasting my life. This shit's kind of how I better understand myself and get other people to understand me, and I feel like through experiencing art and thinking about it and making my own, I've sort of become an entirely different person. There's a reason I credit stuff like Zero by Ichiko Aoba for altering me as a person, because I genuinely feel like that shit's real. I'm shedding off all my constraining excess skin and sprouting my dragonfly wings here. For a while I've been so dissatisfied with everything I make, but I'm slowly understanding everything better and what I like and what resonates with me and how I want to present myself to people. And there's so much that I have to thank for that, and like, I'm proud of myself now, you know? Most of what I've made in the last 2 years I can say means a lot to me. Recently, I've been much more interested in trying to find niche and weird art projects. Tomorrow's My Birthday was a pretty mythical find, but even then I didn't really find it on my own, and I have no idea where to really look for similar stuff. But still, I've been looking, and I've been really wanting something like Tomorrow's My Birthday ever since I played it. The amount of humanity I found in it and how much I saw myself in it is something that I think no other piece of art can really capture again for me in the same way that it does. And if it was traditionally normal and conventional, it really would not have hit nearly as hard for me. I really value all the silly, weird, niche, and goofy art I know of, and being able to find myself in something like that feels very special. Sorry if this was all too cheesy or whatever, but I just wanted to talk about that. Anyways, that's all. Thanks for listening to me. Bye.